Hello and welcome back to the Full Figured Interviews, where we talk to some of the incredible people in our Full Figured community. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it.
Today we are speaking with the Full Figured Industry Awards 2024 Content Creator of the Year, Miss Ebony Marie Martin.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming.
Thank you, honey. How are you today?
I am well, living my life, being a dog mom, things like that.
How many
Amen.
dogs do you have?
This is our first one together, my husband and I. We've each had family dogs, but this is the first time we're raising one together.
Did you get a puppy or was it like from a shelter or?
Yeah, we got her from a shelter in Houston. That's where we live right now. And she was 10 weeks, so very young.
Oh, yeah.
And a very new experience. It's very different from how I remember having a puppy as a child. So, yeah, but we love it. It was the best decision ever.
Fabulous. Well, listen, I think a good first question to ask here is for the people who do not know you. What is the first thing you want viewers to know about you?
I think the first thing I would want people to know about me is that I'm liberated. I don't want to kind of stick to a certain box of like, okay, yes, I started fashion, yes, musician, blah, blah, blah. To kind of encapsulate all that and everything that I've ever done, I want people to know that I'm truly like liberated. I'm living my truth. I'm living happily and freely in the body that I show up in. And I think that's really important because everything in this world is subjective. You know, um, you can have your fashionistas and stuff to tell you what to wear, when to wear it, and beauty and so on and so forth. But I think most importantly, everybody should really strive to feel as happy and as full and free as possible as they show up today.
That term liberated to say, this is what you want people to know about you. Liberated. Girl. What a, what a powerful word to start this on. God damn. You want to let the bitches know that you're here. And you're here and
Hey,
you ain't gonna let them get away with nothing.
no.
That's everything, girl. Liberated. You are fantastic. And I
Mhm.
love that you mentioned, in the body that you show up in, right? I think a good thing to query here is where did you find that love and pride that you have for your body?
So I grew up in a fat family. To me, fatness was normalcy. It wasn't until I was getting older and you start seeing, how people are socialized to view fat people,
Mm.
that you start to really question, like, wait, what's going on here? Is there really a problem? And so I feel like seeing my family members show up as themselves, with their humor and killing it at work and killing it at life. I think for me, I started with that sense of self worth. And really, the battle was kind of keeping it as I got older, as more ideas and people start to get introduced to me, and then really locking in as I'm kind of in my young adult years where you're really starting to develop your sense of self. So I'm just lucky that, my family's already fat, right? Yeah, I'm grateful for that. And yes, it's a struggle to kind of fight against what people put on you, but I started with that foundation and it's made me who I am today.
So with that foundation, what's your relationship to other euphemisms that we have that we tend to use for bigness, like curvy, thick, voluptuous, zoftic,
Oh, even
you
worse,
know?
the word fat is.
Yeah, I grew up during that early 2000s era. So I remember when we were trying to find other words outside of fat to describe fat people to kind of soften the blow or make it sound what it wasn't. I'm pretty go with the flow as far as like terminology. I use fat. I've said before that I'm going to use fat. I've reclaimed fat. It's not something that you're going to use against me in any day of the week. And I do use it as a descriptor, and I have no issues with that term or any, to be honest. As long as it's not derogatory, if somebody's not trying to come at you
Yeah,
crazy.
intent matters. It's about intent. If you
Mhm.
come at me with the intention of being hostile and
Right.
disrespectful and derogatory, then I'm going to take issue with that.
Exactly. Exactly. Outside of that, a word is a word is a word.
Yeah. So you are currently living in Texas, yes?
Yes.
Or you were okay? You currently live in Texas. Got it. So
Mhm.
what's the plus size community like in the South? Because when I say that, I mean like as in terms of like their resources, are there fashions that are meant specifically for plus size people? Are there outlet stores that are meant specifically for plus size people? Because I would think that we kind of have this collective idea of the South being about hospitality, food, you know, so many things. Like when you think of the South, you think of home, comfort. So I would think that there'd be a pretty big market for plus size in the South.
Honestly, the South, if you're thinking about America as a whole, the fattest people come from the South just because of the stuff that you just listed, right?
Mhm.
But honestly, there's still not a lot of access, especially in fashion for fat folks. And definitely not trendy fashion. That's just like across the board. I've honestly found more size inclusive options, at least in store, probably in the East Coast. Yeah, for the most part. It's a shame because, like I said, majority of the people here are fat. That just is what it is. But there's a lot of internalized anti-fatness. So a lot of the fat people here that aren't in like a creative space or who aren't a certain age, they're not really looking to have access either. They rather kind of like fit into what society has told them they need to fit into. They're kind of stuck in that mindset. I've seen some people kind of, open their eyes to the fact that, you know what, even though, I may not feel super comfortable in my body now, I do think that other fat people need access to clothing, to better health care, because y'all, health care, we have to talk about that, but just having you know, access in general as a fat person is difficult here still.
Mm.
Mm. I mean,
It's which baffles me because, like you said, if the majority of the population is plus size, there's unspent billions of dollars.
yeah.
Why
Yeah.
not just make the because the amount of money you're going to spend on the fabric, the profit that you will make is going to make up for however much more you have to spend on getting it manufactured somewhere at a larger size. Because we know dang well that they're not sewing it by hand in their
Yeah.
studio. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
that speaks power, unfortunately, to the nature of fat phobia. That there are billions of fashion doll hairs that could be made. All one bitch needs to do is say, "I'm gonna be the one to start up the fashion company that makes plus size clothing accessible for everyone." That's all they gotta do, and they will outstrip. Like, I think someone ran the numbers, like what a lot of the major fashion houses, like Givenchy and Gucci, are making. Like, they could outstrip them just in the
Oh
comp
wow.
dollar for like fast fashion, right? But no company wants to do that because they are
Yeah.
prepared to take the monetary loss so long as it means that they don't have to have fat people wearing their clothing. And I think that says a lot about, why, as you say, so many fat people don't feel comfortable trying to access plus size fashions because you don't know what you don't know. They don't know
Right.
that there are opportunities out there for them. And also, if you don't see it being spoken about and talked about, that can be really challenging. And I think that brings in a lot what you do as a content creator. But I want to bring it back for a sec because Miss Thing, you have been a talented bitch since day Dot, you are a singer, an opera singer, right?
Yes.
Damn. God, listen, I need to know, what was your relationship with music and creativity like growing up?
I've always, I think, simultaneously loved music and fashion. Music, I started piano lessons around 5, I think. I was going to my aunt's piano lessons and sitting in, and then I finally asked my parents, I was like, hey, can I join? And so my grandpa took care of it, and I stuck with piano throughout my childhood and into college, and as well as started singing kind of late into high school, going into college. And my dad was such a great singer. He has a beautiful voice. My aunt, as well, she studied to try to do music in college, but she decided on a different major. But I've had like great musicians around me as well. And so I think that really uh, kind of grew my love for music as a whole. And then as far as fashion, my grandmothers were really the cornerstones of my fashion. They grew up, or they were born in like the 30s and 40s. And so they, slayed a look, especially going to church. They'd have their three-piece skirt suit set with the matching church hat. And, it's pageantry in the Southern church, essentially. And my parents were sporty. So they wanted me to wear kind of like the fashions of the 90s at the time, the baggy jeans, Tim's, like the Aaliyah stuff. But I was so into like my grandmother's fashion, the kind of like traditional feminine cuts and feels. And they really fostered it. They always made sure to take me shopping with them, to get jewelry and clothes. Unfortunately, we'll have to get on, about being a adolescent child shopping in your grandmother's section. But yeah, both I think those people in my lives helped me simultaneously love both of those outlets and really created something in me that fostered that creativity in more ways than one.
That's beautiful. I feel like as we've gotten the chance to speak to people over this series, there's such an interesting through line of the family that talks about
Mhm.
where we come to with our inspirations, whether it's, this type of music that allows us to feel to express with our voice, or fashion that allows us to express with our aesthetic. There's something very beautiful about how the people in our lives really do influence so much about our modern sense of self. And I think sometimes, yes, of course, we can unpick and unpack traumas and, things that maybe weren't so great. But in a moment like this, how beautiful to center the family as a sense of this is that source of inspiration. And for women growing up in an era, the 30s and 30s and 40s, between two world wars, what an interesting time in the world to be when, industry is ramping up and opportunities are arising. And here are two wonderful women in different parts of their lives serving, bringing their fullness into a moment, and really that continuing on in their legacy through you.
Right. Yeah. It's beautiful. And on top of that, my grandmothers, they were both fat as well. I don't think they were when they were younger, but by the time I came around, they were. And they never displayed any type of self-doubt or self-deprecation of themselves because they were fat in a world that looked at them like they shouldn't be. And they continued to be fabulous up until their last day. And I think, like I said before, just having that foundation in my family first helped me start with a strong sense of self and helped me kind of stay true to myself as I got older and started to develop as a person.
And
Thank you.
looking at that career that you developed for yourself, and as you've said, yeah, girl, you've done a lot. So, looking maybe let's go music first, right? So,
Mhm.
opera. First of all, stunning, talented, incredible. What led you to opera as the specific genre of voice?
That's such a great question. I think that when I was growing up in the 90s, opera was being used a lot in commercials. So I was getting influenced by it before recognizing that I was. And then once I started choir in high school, because all of that music is classical, I grew a deeper love for classical music. And my teacher at the time was like, "Hey, you have a voice to do this professionally. You should apply for a program in college." And I was like, "That's crazy," because I've been primarily piano for the first like 12 years of my life, 12 or 13 years of my life. And so singing was just so new. I didn't think that I could create a career in that. But I auditioned to a few schools. I got a few offers and I took the best one. And my teacher at my college really started to develop me into the opera singer that I would become. And then I continued to that education into my master's as well. So, I can book the jobs and the gigs. It's not that you can't if you just have a bachelor's, but they like you to have a master's. So I continued that education with that in mind. And I stuck with opera the entire time. The longer that I studied it, the harder I fell for it.
I too have a love of opera. A big fan of Maria Callas.
Yeah.
Um, and you've performed in both the United States and over in Europe. How do you feel like the crowds are in those? Like, what's a U.S. audience like compared to a European audience?
I feel like a European audience is a lot more enthusiastic. Not to say that a US audience isn't, so because the people that go to see it generally want to see it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little more commonplace, it's a little more enthusiastic in Europe. So like for example, my husband and I were walking to the apartment we were staying at in Italy when we were studying there. And he just started singing one of the arias that we were working on for a master class. I think it was, what was it? It was something from Cose fan tutte by Mozart. And the people just started clapping as he started singing. And mind you, we're in the street. We're just out and about. And they gave a lot of praise and they showed us a lot of love in that city. And it's not something I think you can do in the US. You can't just walk out on the street and start singing opera, depending on where you are.
Mhm.
Some people are like, can you shut up? Because it's a loud art form, to be honest. You have to be able to project naturally. And so some people can handle it, some people can't. But I think it's just a little more engrossed in the culture. It's a little more enthusiastic in Europe versus the United States. And yeah, that's kind of our experience. But not to say that people aren't excited in the US, but only in like a formal setting of a concert or if they see a video clip. It's not so like, oh, I can go out on the street and just start singing. And people are like, "Woo, yeah, especially opera."
How do you feel they treated you about being plus size? Like, do you feel that you experienced anything different in the U.S. as opposed to when you performed in Europe?
So, from an audience standpoint, I didn't have any issues in Europe like that. We were only there for a month and a half, so maybe I wasn't there long enough. But for the most part, we were fine. I was fine. I wasn't the only fat person there, but I was one of very few because we were studying with an American management company there. And then in the US, same thing, like audience wise. Industry wise, I couldn't tell you from a European standpoint because, like I said, we were still working with an American company. But in America, industry wise, it's been difficult being fat and being a singer. For sure. I've been told several times growing up or, practicing and performing, hey, you would be the biggest star out right now on stage if you would just lose this amount of weight, or if you would fit into this size, or blase, blase, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what does that matter? Because at the end of the day, opera is very physical, right? If
Mhm.
I am a trained opera singer, I have trained for that physicality. So my weight shouldn't keep me from getting these opportunities. But a lot of them perceive it as, okay, well, you're heavier, you're not going to be able to move as well, or at least that's the excuse that they give. It's really they don't want to see you up there.
Yeah, I was about to say, how much movement do you really do throughout the course of singing
Right.
an aria? Or, like, yeah, you'll move across the stage, but you're not going to be running
Yeah.
and jumping and dancing.
We're not doing a 5K and
No.
singing. We're fine. But it's really, they don't want to see you up there. The
Mhm.
truth be told, they don't want to
Yeah.
say it, but I'm going to say it. They don't want to see you up there, especially if you're a soprano like myself. They like more of like the ingenue body types, things like that for any type of soprano role. And so if you don't fit that, they're not really interested in casting you in it, regardless if they love your voice or not. So that's been my experience on the industry side of it.
So, would you say that that was what was the impetus to start with content creation and fashion?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Because opera is gig work. And so you can only make so much money as you're getting hired. And it was getting to a certain point where I was like, I was getting all of these no's, and you sound great, but we're looking for something else, blah, blah, blah. And I was lucky my husband was a tenor and he's straight size. So he can work, whenever, how long, and so forth. So he kept us afloat a lot. But my experience was so difficult because there were just so many intersections I was dealing with. I'm Black, I'm fat, I am not rich, so I don't have a lot of money to throw at it to, kind of bribe my way through it. I don't have a lot of connections because I'm not rich and I'm not aligned with wealthy people. You're born into a certain socioeconomic class. That is what you have to pull from. And so it's difficult if you don't know anyone, if you don't have money, and you're not desirable on stage. It doesn't matter how well you sound or how much you trained or how much you know, you're not going to get hired. And so it wasn't until we moved to Chicago that I was actually starting to see some merit based off of what I was doing and what I could provide. And that was mainly because we had a friend there who already had um, infiltrated the market, and there was a strong Black classical community there to make sure that people were getting work and not being overlooked. And yeah, and that helped because otherwise, if you're not fitting into those standards, you're not getting hired. It's very, it's just what it is. And I started creating because I wanted to create and I wanted to do something that was creative and put myself out there without feeling like I had to cover up and be super stuck in this box, because opera is very conservative as well. And I just needed to kind of like take a break, be creative while also reimagining who I am at this point. Am I showing up as my full self in opera? At a certain point, I wasn't. That led me to start creating and having a good time doing that.
I mean, I think we can all see the blessings of that journey that's taken you on, because we get to witness you in your fullness, both of figure and of spirit, and it's a wonderful thing to get to witness in and share in this moment. And there is something I would like to ask you here, because of course you've been, you know, very, very open with us. You mentioned being a woman of color from, you know, those low economic backgrounds, and you talk about how this system just does not provide you the opportunities to flourish like you deserve to. And I feel like sometimes with these conversations, we can hyperfixate on one of those elements and say, oh, well, it's because of this, when in actual fact it's systemic and it's all of these things come together. And I know sometimes in our intersectional communities, we want to show up for people, and we want to show up for them in all the ways that we can. And we can miss the ball just a little bit because we go, well, it's because of this one thing. But actually, there were all these other factors because of all the other intersections. And I want to present you this opportunity here to speak to it. As a person who exists at the intersection of so many of these experiences, what is it about that specific intersection that you sit in, that you want people to understand when it comes to showing up and giving you the support that you need, when it comes to offering an ear to listen and providing that support? What do you need people to know?
I think the support that I really was looking for during that downtime and that transitional time in my life was really just an ear and empathy, because people can only do so much for you. I think that had I had more people outside of my husband and a few friends that were willing to listen to my experience and empathize with me and show me support, even just verbally, I think it would have made me feel a little less crazy. So yeah, I think a lot of people assume that it's not a big deal. You can turn this around, whatever. It's kind of like throwaway a little bit, or not really fully believing in your experience, thinking that can't be happening. Surely not. They think they're making you feel better by saying that's not happening, but it makes you feel crazy.
Lord, say it again for the people in the back. Like, I don't need you to
Yeah.
gaslight me. I need you to gaslight my fire and gas me up.
Mhm.
I need you.
Yeah.
I need you to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. I need imaginary pitchforks in my honor.
100%. But thank you for being so candid and sharing with that. You know, I think sometimes, as much as I love the opportunity to delve into someone's success and the joy and the shine, I think we so quickly forget that how much of this is a grind and a pain,
Mhm.
and it is thankless and it's hard. So in this moment, this is us seeing you in the work and in the struggle. So thank you. Thank you for being so
Thank you.
with all that. Now, I did want to ask, because I listened to some of your other interviews, and I was curious, because I think it was on Fashion 360, you had said the editing is the most important part of content creation. And I'd love to delve into that more. Why is it that editing is the most important part, and how have you used editing to develop your personal sense of style?
So editing to me has always been the most important. Now, in the age of TikTok, we can kind of question if that's still the most important. But I still believe editing is the most important, because the way you edit helps you kind of get your message across more efficiently, and it helps you in the push you in the algorithm a little bit better, especially with this new demographic of consumers. The attention span is shorter. So even if it's just a simple motion of, if I'm doing a makeup video and I'm just brushing my face, the kids want to see you cut all of that. It could be from 1 second to second 3, but they want to see the cut. That's how they're used to consuming their content, as far as short form is concerned. And long form, a lot of times it's gonna have to look like that as well, editing wise, unless you're watching commentary. If you're doing anything that requires you to do beauty, do fashion, anything where people aren't showing up just to hear you talk the entire time, you're gonna have to learn how to edit your videos in a way that is capturing the focus of the people that you want to keep showing up for you. And as far as editing for my fashion or how it's impacted my fashion, I think that I wouldn't say editing in particular has really impacted it, but I think that watching the kids, I've been watching a lot of the kids, the younger Gen Zs and things like that, and their get ready with me's. And I think I pull a lot of inspiration from the kids because I grew up in a certain era where certain things were the trends. And as I get older, I want to not get stuck in my ways and get stuck in certain ways of styling myself. And so, yeah, I get inspired by the kids and I kind of do an old with the new type thing to make something that's uniquely me that can resonate with people in a wider age range.
I mean, I've done a lot of theatre in my past, and I always think about sort of like when you're younger and they're really training you to like put it out on the floor. They're saying you don't hold back trying to self-edit before it's all out there. Put it all out there first. Be too loud. Be too much. Because if you're too loud and too much, that's fabulous. I can tell you from there, oh, dial it back a little bit. But there is nothing more agonizing than someone who just wants to give you a little, and then you got to be like louder, more, like, and if they don't want to, they don't want to. You can't make more from less, but you can always edit from more. And I feel like when I reflect on my own acting skills, or if I reflect on, the art that I've engaged in the past, a sense of editing means that you're training your eye on not just what looks good and what doesn't look good, but based on your preferences on the bit. I think you
Mm.
learn more about the idea of removing something from what is there than you do from trying to like put things together, if that makes sense. Or at least that's what makes sense in my brain.
Right. That makes total sense. And yes, you're totally correct about especially in theater. And it's the same thing with opera. The critique is always go big or go home. And if we have to scale it back, we will. And I've tried to do that with my fashion throughout the years. I've tried to push the limits. Like I said, opera is still more conservative. And so the things that I was doing was still pushing the boundaries fashion wise in opera. And, but no, you're right. I think kind of like editing, what exactly do I really want to put together? What is most important? What's unnecessary? So on and so forth. And how I dress myself now versus when I was maybe like a decade ago.
Also, you collaborate with different brands. How do you pitch to such big names? Like, what do you tell them to like get them excited to collaborate with you?
Yeah, yeah. What's your elevator pitch?
I'm gonna be honest. I started pitching to brands when I was like at like 200 or 300 followers. I had never had the language. I was just like, hey, I love fashion. I'd like to work with you, right? And I think sometimes, even if you don't have the right pitch, just throwing your hat in the ring is a lot because some of those brands that I pitched you at 300 followers came back to me at 3,000 followers. And so it may not have been at that moment, but they came back. So I didn't pitch to them again. They just were, hey, we want to work with you, so on and so forth. And so yeah, sometimes they just wrap around later. 3,000 followers in the grand scheme of things is not particularly large. But if you've taken that time from 300 followers to 3,000 to build kind of like your catalog or your profile on your pages, and they like it enough, they'll spin the block and say, hey, we'd love to work with you. So that has been my experience for the most part.
Hmm.
I think when I was starting, I was pitching to smaller brands as well that may not have had a budget, but they didn't mind like doing gifted collaborations with me to help build that profile so bigger brands decide to reach out. But I've been lucky in that way that they've just been like, hey, actually, we want to work with you. One of the brands in particular, Yitty, I started working with them randomly because at the time they had just launched. Maybe a few months in, they decided to have a giveaway to see Lizzo in concert. And so I made content for that because it was a content giveaway. And they liked that so much that they put it on their profiles. And then I was a winner of the giveaway. And then they were like, hey, since we like that, can you be an ambassador for us? And I have been working with them ever since. So sometimes it's not even just pitching. Sometimes if they're doing contests or things like that, where they're asking you to do content to show yourself, sometimes they pick you up from that as well. Any opportunity is an opportunity. So my advice would be to anytime there's a brand that you like is doing something outside of pitching yourself, always put your hat in the ring for anything that they have going on. And they may ask you to be, an ambassador for them or work with them for any
Never
reason.
know until you try. I mean, how are you going to know? And I wanted to ask, once you got into the fashion and the content creation and all that, did your relationship with your body change at all as you started to garner some attention and interest in what you do? Like, did you find that, like how can I put this? Like, people weren't saying like nasty things to you, right? I would hope not.
Not a lot, luckily. But you're a fat creator, you're gonna get it, right? On any platform. I've even had people tell me to die, like just for putting on a skirt and a top. It's not that real for anybody, but they have a problem with people existing. So what can you do? So yeah, I think my relationship with my body changed. I think I became more self-assured, almost more radical about my body and how I present it. I didn't have an issue, showing more skin. I've always been into the crop tops and things like that, but like even, not wearing everything high-waisted or wearing something that's sleeveless and not being weird about your arms and stuff. I think doing content creation has helped me be even more comfortable and be more, as I've said, radical about my sense of self and self-worth and my body image. I tell my students, because I teach privately, and the singers are the ones that are like really self-conscious, right? I don't want to sound bad, blah, blah, blah. I said, we're in a lesson. This is the time to sound as ugly as possible. I need to hear everything that's going on so I can fix it or coach it or help you, navigate through it. You can't come in sounding whispery pretty, what you think is pretty, because from the outside, I think what you think sounds ugly sounds beautiful. It's your full voice, it's your full sound. And it's the same thing as you just said, showing up as your full self, not trying to come in, I gotta have the best camera and I have to record everything at this angle because this is my best angle or this is my good side. Like, people are drawn to people that show up as themselves fully. It's gonna naturally happen that way because it's just more interesting.
Now, Miss Thing, you are our content creator of the year. What does that do for you to be a part of this plus size legacy?
I was so taken aback and so honored to even be nominated with everyone there. I came in a little bit later in content creation than a lot of people, and even a lot of people that, I was competing against. And to be recognized, even though I've come later, there was still a lot of hard work, sweat, and tears, and what I've done in the time that I've done it. And to be recognized in that way was everything to me because of not only the work, but kind of like the connotation that content creator gets, that influencer gets. I don't know if you guys saw, but when TikTok was supposedly being shut down, you know, a lot of non-creators were like, oh, now you guys have to get a real job. And, you know, it's just knowing that a big portion of society views what you do as less than or not work, and being recognized that no, what you do is important, what you do impacts others. It was everything for me. It was the validation I needed for the time that I put into content creation, because it's a lot of work. It's time consuming, and until you put in that work and that time, you don't really see the gains.
Mm.
But it was everything. I that's one of the highlights of my entire career.
That's beautiful. And you know, there's another reason why I don't necessarily tell the friends and family about what you know, with podcast, because people love to be, you know, they love to be like, how's that little show you doing?
Yeah, that little.
That
It's always that
little,
little.
that little thing going. And you just sit there like,
Yeah, where they're like, "Oh, is that still going? Is that still happening?"
yeah.
Yeah, 5 years in, you know.
You're like, I'm
Right.
gonna miss. Thank you, trophy. Actually,
Right.
like, dang. Now, baby, I need to ask you because I'm so curious. I love to get to know people because, you know, we are proud, full-figured bitches here on this
Mhm.
channel and in these interviews. So I need to ask you, what food gives you life and what food brings you peace?
I think the food that gives me life is sushi. Anything sushi. I love sushi down. Oh my God. If I can eat my weight in sushi every day, I'd be the happiest person on earth. I love it. Like, sushi down. And then peace. What makes me feel cozy and peaceful? I think if I had to pick a peaceful meal, it'd still be an Asian dish, but it would be pho. Yeah, because a big bowl of pho, and then you're watching your show and everything, like it's the best. It's the best. I love it. I can eat Asian food for the rest of my life.
Yes. Now, I do want to ask you here, what aspects of plus size everything do you think gets too much shine? And what do you think we need to see more of?
Truth be told, I don't think anything plus size anything gets too much shine. It needs, we need more shine. Um, because the obvious answer would be fashion, but it's still not enough. We need more. We need more fashion for fat folks with different types of style out and about in the forefront. I think. I think what I would love to see more of, at least in a creator space, is like more fat people in like regular marketing, as far as like, I don't know, like a grocery store ad, or an ad for new prescription glasses, or you know, just like everyday stuff, or ad to buy houses, an ad for anything. Like, I don't think people recognize how much everyday marketing that we view, and fat people are not even in it at all. Like we don't exist. We don't buy houses. We don't buy furniture. We don't take our kids to the park. We don't. We're just at home eating or something. I don't know. But I'd like to see more plus size marketing in other industries outside of fashion.
Now, last question here for you, my love. And I'm so sorry to say that this is we're rounding out the end of this, but dang, this was a pleasure. My goodness.
Oh, man.
We need to know what is coming up next for you, and what is the next big thing you want after that.
So right now, my husband and I have a nonprofit 501c3 organization called Music Lives. And so we're currently finalizing dates for our tour this year. We're touring specifically spirituals, which is like classical African music or African American music. And I think my goal for that is to not only have those dates finalized, but to kind of see that full tour realized. Because I think a lot of people don't recognize how hard it is to organize a tour. And when you are the performer as well, preparing for the performance and organizing is difficult. So I think that one of my biggest goals is to have a successful tour this year. And after that, I would love for both Music Lives and myself to be recognized during award season, whether that be the Fires or anywhere else.
She's already taken to home content creator. Now we need entertainer. We need to split the categories next year. I think 2025. Is that the goal?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Big power to it. Yes. Ebony, this is fabulous. Thank you for just being so excellent, so brilliant.
Oh, thank you. You guys were excellent. I loved it. It was such a good time.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you.
Now listen, where can the viewers find you online?
You can find me on all platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, at emmfashion.com or emmfashionhaus. So EMM, the word fashion, house, the French way, HAUS, all together.
Gorgeous. And was that a website I was hearing before, perhaps? A little website?
We do have a website, but it's not up. It's
I was
not
on
up.
I was just that's fine.
Not yet, at least. But
Not
yeah.
Well, y'all can check, and do some Googling when this goes up and let us know. But listen, y'all, we've got Ebony here, and this was a fantastic episode, honestly. Oh, my goodness, that's a wrap for now here with this week's Full Figured interview. You can find me on Instagram at Stanham.
And you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at thiccradio.
Now, please like this video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Comment below, let us know your thoughts on today's conversation. Share the video with your friends and encourage them to tune in next week, where we'll be speaking with more full-figured excellence right here on the channel. So until then, have a great week.